Welcome to the Empower Her podcast. I'm Deanna, an ex-corporate manager turned certified coach, empowering you to create the life of your dreams. My goal is to guide you and support you in understanding what you really want in life, what steps to take to get there, and learn to actually enjoy the ride. Whether you are climbing the corporate ladder, a stay-at-home parent, or an entrepreneur, I coach you on how to believe you are worthy of a balanced, happy, and energetically positive life in work and at home. My goal in this podcast is to help you recognize patterns, implement change, and use your energy for positivity within yourself and your own life. I believe you don't have to suffer in this lifetime. You can create a life on your terms based on what you want, regardless of what that looks like. It is about reframing your beliefs, letting go of negative thoughts, and looking at your life as a set of opportunities there for you. I'm so excited to get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Empower Her podcast. Hi, everyone. I was on vacation this week, just a couple days, went to the lake. My sister's in town, so I was so excited about that. I want to get into today's episode, but before that, I wanted to kind of mention something that I was feeling and that I think could maybe resonate with a lot of people as well. Is when I was on vacation, I just had this feeling of being like super rigid and just being in my comfort zone all the time. Like when I just think about my business and how I run my business and the things I do week to week, I just feel so rigid. And for me, one of the big points of leaving corporate and starting my own business was like, okay, how can I be more flexible? And I want to have that flexibility and do what I want to do. And I felt like that even though I can do what I want to do, I don't do what I want to do, right? And of course, like I need to make content, I need to work with my clients, like that's part of my business, right? But I was just super rigid about the type of posts I would create and what I would put out online. And just the creativity aspect of it has just been missing completely. And so I've sort of made it my mission, like to just try to do new things. I'm going to try to do something new every week. I'm saying this is part of accountability. Get out of my comfort zone, do different things that I think are going to bring more creativity into my life. So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. I'm really someone that just like on my personal Instagram, I just post cryptic IG posts like every 3 months and call it a day. But I'm going to try to be more open, post more, on my Instagram, not necessarily my personal one, but the business one, Coach Deanna DeBolt, and just kind of post more about my personal life, document the things that I'm going through, because I think a lot of the things that I deal with as well could really resonate with people. So that's going to be my mission. I also posted that I'm reading The Secret. I just started reading it. I've heard so much about it. And honestly, I feel like, many people find The Secret and then they start their journey into manifestation and mindset work and all of that. But I've already been doing that for years. So for me, it's more just to see kind of what it's all about and get another perspective and just, to see if there's anything I can take away from it to better support my clients and myself as well. And I'm not done. I think about halfway through. And so far, it's talked a lot about gratitude and how we can really show up as the future version of ourselves that already has everything. A quote that stuck with me from it was expect the check, which is basically like, don't expect that you are not going to have money. Don't expect that your client isn't going to pay you. Don't expect that you won't be able to pay your bills, but instead expect the check, expect the positive thing that's going to happen. Like we always try to think worst case scenario. And I think a lot of times we just manifest the worst case scenario because we keep thinking about it versus like in the law of attraction, you attract what you think and feel, right? So if you're expecting the check, expecting to have a good night out when you're out with your friends, expecting to meet a partner, right? If you keep expecting it, it's going to happen, right? Also, language shifting was really big, and this kind of goes hand in hand, is just having that positive and abundant thoughts. And, this really ties so well into our topic today, because today I want to talk about how I manifested a major life decision nearly 10 years ago. So, kind of the secret and being out of my comfort zone and all these things just relates perfectly to the topic. So, the topic today is, as I mentioned, is how I made a major life decision 10 years ago. And my major life decision that I made was I moved halfway across the world at 22 completely by myself after I graduated college. So, just for context, I was born in Budapest, Hungary, which is a country in the middle of Europe. And when I was 5, I moved to California with my family. My dad's American, my mom's Hungarian, and we moved to California. I lived in California for 17 years. I basically grew up there. I went to school from kindergarten all the way until I graduated college. I spent in California. So my really formative years were spent there. And then when I graduated college 3 weeks after, I decided to move back to Hungary, and I've lived there ever since. Now, I am planning on moving next year, but that's a whole other discussion. But anyways, I've been in Hungary for the last 9 years. Next year will be 10 years. So I am Hungarian. I'm half Hungarian. I speak Hungarian. My mom and her side of the family is Hungarian. And I had the privilege of every summer spending my summers in Hungary. And I just remember, like, when I was a kid and even a teenager, I could not wait to be here in the summertime. Like, I always wanted to go. I couldn't wait for it to be summer. And I remember at the end of summer, I never wanted to go home. And I always felt this urge, like deep down, I want to move here. I want to be here, right? And originally, I thought about going to college in Hungary as well. I was actually dating someone. We were together for almost 3 years. He was living in Hungary and I was living in California, which in and of itself is psychotic, especially like from ages 16 and 19. But I digress. I loved my long distance relationships. But I ended up making a decision for myself, despite that I knew that it would affect our relationship probably negatively. I made a decision to stay in California and go to school. I went to SCSU, and I have talked about in a previous podcast how I manifested going to school and how I just felt this like knowing. I went on a field trip my senior year in high school to the campus, and I just had this feeling of like, oh my God, this is where I need to be. This is where I need to go to school, and just knowing. And I pretty much only applied to that school. I applied to one other school just as a backup to make my parents happy, but I was like, I'm going to SCSU, period, the end. Like, there's no other question about it, right? Which also ties really well into our conversation today. But this was the same feeling I had, right? When I wanted to move, I was like, I'm going to move, period. Like, I didn't even think there was another option. I just knew it deep in my soul that I was going to move and I wanted to move. And it's interesting because lately I've been really into astrocartography, which is basically like based on your astrology chart, looking at your astrocartography lines on the world. Like, they create lines on a map to see where you could potentially live. And I do have a line that's close to Budapest. It's in another city. It's more closer to Paris, but I still think it's close enough. And it's just really interesting. And I've always felt like the universe was telling me to move. And I've always loved Paris as well. And Budapest, they say, is like the Paris of like kind of Central or Eastern Europe. And so just having this like really intense connection to Budapest, to being here. And back then when I felt this, like, I wasn't super spiritual. I didn't really know what these things meant. I just thought like, yeah, that's what I want to do, and that's it. But it was evident that it was going to happen. I had absolutely no doubt that I was going to move, right? Like, it was going to happen. So when you're thinking about that, that's definitely step one, is you really want to understand like what it is that you want, and then take aligned action, which we'll talk about in a minute. But so what did I actually do? Because so many people talk about manifesting, right? And they're like, I had this knowing, and then there's no follow up. Like, what happens, right? And it's not enough to just attract something, right? So that's why The Secret is so great. It talks about the law of attraction, but it only scratches the surface, right? That's not the only thing that you should be doing. That's just basically declaring what you want and having positive thoughts and having gratitude. But I couldn't just think I was going to move to Europe and then it just happened, right? Like, I needed to take aligned action. So what did I actually do? The first thing is Obviously, I knew I could legally work there and live there. I have a passport. I'm a citizen, so that wasn't an issue. But I knew I needed to support myself working here. And at the time, I was going to college and I was working 3 jobs. I was working as a receptionist, I was working as a babysitter, and then I decided to get a third job, which I felt like was a really great option for me that I could do in Europe. And what I ended up doing was I found a job where I could work completely remotely online, and I was doing resumes, LinkedIn, and cover letters. I was basically a resume, LinkedIn, and cover letter writer for clients, and I could work as much as I wanted or as little as I wanted. I picked my own hours. I just had to have them done in like a certain amount of days, but I got to, work whenever. And this was like crazy back then because this was like over 10 years ago. This was before remote jobs were super popular, right? Like this was not a thing. When I told people I worked completely online, like they were like, okay, that's interesting. And I knew that this was a job that I could do moving to Europe. So when I moved, I quit my other 2 jobs when they were in person, and I ended up just doing this online job full time. And as soon as I graduated college, 3 weeks later, I took my 8 suitcases and I moved to Budapest, and I was able to do my job online, right? So I worked through college so I could save money for my plane ticket, for my down payment on my apartment when I rented, or, all of that good stuff. Any, furniture that I needed to get, any living expenses I thought I would need to have like upfront, when you rent an apartment and when you do those things. That was the aligned action. And also the other aligned action was having a job where I knew I could support myself there and where I could work there just as easily. So I moved and I had the remote job, and it was great because it paid the bills. It was flexible. I could enjoy time, spend time learning, living there, understanding what it would be like. And it was really, really great for me. And so this is how I manifested it. I had this knowing, I declared that I wanted it. I had no doubt in my mind. And then I took the aligned action to actually get there, right? And like I mentioned, I'm going to be moving next year. I'm actually going back to the States most likely, and I'm going to be using the same process of moving, right? Like, my partner and I talk a lot, and he's a Virgo. And if you know Virgos in astrology, they're usually the ones that are like astrology, anti spirituality. But we talk about this a lot, and he's always worried. He's like, okay, but we need to save up this much and whatever. And I'm like, I'm not worried. It's going to happen. We're going to work it out. And that doesn't mean that I'm sitting back and I'm not doing the things to make sure that we can move, right? We need to get married before we move. We need to save up a certain amount before we move. We need to be financially stable, right? We need to have him apply for his green card. Like there's so many things that we have to get done before we move. So it's not that I'm sitting on my couch and not doing anything. I'm just not worried because I know it's going to happen. I have this deep knowing that it's going to happen, right? And I'm taking the steps in the aligned action to make that happen, right? So this is really, really how you manifest. So let's just talk about the process of manifesting and how do you make this happen. And this can work for anything you're trying to manifest. So first, you actually have to believe with all your heart and your soul that it's going to happen. So I believed with all my heart and my soul that I was going to move to Hungary 10 years ago, period, the end. It wasn't a question. Everyone thought I was dumb. Everyone told me I was stupid to move. How could you leave the States, have a good life, and move to Hungary where the economic, political situation isn't great? Yeah, it's not great. But that doesn't mean that, you can't be happy here, right? Then you start to take aligned action, right? Once you have this knowing, once you do it. And I took the aligned action, right? I saved up money. I was working 3 jobs. I got my degree. I got a job that I could work remote to make sure I could support myself. I took all the aligned action. And then you need to actually take the plunge, right? Book the plane ticket, pack your stuff, get on the move, right? I listened to my intuition, I listened to the universe, and I listened to what felt good, and then I took the aligned action. And something I want to mention here is that so often we're programmed, and I was too, I had to deprogram this from myself, is we are programmed to just ignore our feelings and just go with what society thinks or use our brains. But we need to actually use our gut. We actually need to use our instincts, right? Again, coming back to everyone told me I was dumb for moving. Literally everyone. They said I wouldn't get a good job. I wouldn't get a good salary. I wouldn't have a good living situation. And I was like, I just don't think that that's true, right? I don't think that that's true. Right. And I ended up having a job where I could pay the bills, and it paid the bills well. I made a good salary. I got an apartment that I wanted for the price I wanted. Everyone told me that was unrealistic. Right. I had such a good time and I really made the most of it. Right. And there was just like, I see the flaws that are in this country, right? I see all the flaws. No country's perfect. I wasn't going to listen to people when I had this deep knowing that everything was going to go well, right? So I manifested it. Another mini thing I manifested was about 6 months in after moving here, I felt a little bit isolated and alone. I did have friends, but everyone worked a 9 to 5, and I felt like I wasn't able to make friends because I was just working from home. So I thought, okay, I'm going to start looking at roles and applying to in person roles casually and see what happens. So I ended up being in this Facebook group for English speaking jobs, and I found a job there that I liked. I messaged the recruiter. I applied for the job. Basically, long story short, I ended up getting the job. It was at a really big company where I ended up working for almost 7 years. And I remember everyone telling me, oh, you can't ask for a big salary. It's your first job. Oh, you can only ask for this much. Everyone was telling me basically to ask for way less money than I thought that I could ask for. And I'm not talking about like an inflated amount of money, right? I did my research. I looked up and saw what the salaries were, how much people were asking for with X amount of years of experience. I wasn't doing anything unrealistically, but because people had such a negative lack mindset, they were projecting that onto me. And I was like, okay, well, I still know it's possible. And I asked for almost double the amount of what people were telling me, to ask for. And they were shocked when I told them I had, when I got this salary, right? And it really wasn't anything like super exorbitant, right? Like I have a college degree, I had work experience, I spoke English and Hungarian, like for the company, for the role, for my experience, like it was a perfectly good salary. Like it wasn't even the highest amount, right? But people just have this lack mindset. And that's the thing is I had this deep knowing and I knew that I was going to get that salary. I also took the aligned action because I did the research. I looked and saw what the research was about the salaries, right? I didn't just make a blind decision and say, oh, give me $2 million salary, right? I didn't do that. I was realistic, but I was also sure that I was going to get something that was worthy of it. So, despite all the negatives, I just kept in my mind, like, I know what's best. I know the right thing, period, the end. It doesn't matter what anyone says to me, right? And I think that's really important with manifesting is having this deep knowing and just being positive, having that positive mindset, speaking into the universe. And then, of course, again, like taking that aligned action, which is so, so important. And the reason I wanted to talk about this topic today about manifesting specifically, because even though I'm sharing my manifesting wins right now, recently I've really struggled with manifesting, specifically when it comes to my business and money. I'm really good at manifesting my moves, manifesting, people writing to me, like friends of mine reaching out. I'm really good at manifesting parking spots, but I'm not good at manifesting in my business and with money. I'm just not. I never have been. And it's something that I want to get better at. And I don't even say that I'm not good at manifesting anymore because that's negative. Just for the sake of this podcast, I'm saying this so you understand. But it's something that I've struggled with. And I bring this topic up not just to inspire you, but I'm also wanting to inspire myself and my beliefs because that is super, super important. I want to have that energy of manifesting like I did when I manifested the college I went to, or when I manifested my move, or when I manifested that job, right? I've manifested several jobs. So why wouldn't I be able to manifest my career and manifest my business and manifest lots of money, right? So this is why I wanted to talk about this topic. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's struggling. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you on Instagram. Feel free to DM me. But I really wanted to give this as an example of like, if you're struggling, it's okay and you can get out of it, and also give you the tips on how to do it and show you an inspiring story of how I manifested multiple things in my life and how it is possible, right? So this is your sign. If you've been struggling with manifesting, this is your sign to believe in yourself and manifest that dream car, that job, that dream partner, that Chanel bag, right? The amount of money you want, the book you want, right? Like whatever it is that you are manifesting, this is your sign to believe in yourself and manifest. This is your sign because at the end of the day, it's possible. I literally just gave you examples of how it's possible. There's so many examples in life of how people have manifested, and it is possible, and it is something that you can do, but you have to believe in yourself as a first step. You have to start thinking about your gut and how to use your gut, and you have to start believing that it is possible because that's what's going to get you to where you want to be. It's not about the aligned action. The aligned action is the easy part. The hard part is believing it. The hard part is actually understanding that you are capable of everything that you want. Because I know I've said this before, but if you have a thought, if you have something you want, it's there for a reason. The universe wouldn't have put it in your head if it wasn't something you already had in another universe or something that you were capable of getting. So take this as a sign, start believing in yourself, start taking steps to manifesting whatever that thing is you want, because it is possible and you are going to make it happen. So I hope this was inspiring to all of you. I just wanted to remind you that I do have coaching spots open, and I've opened slots for August as well. So if you'd like to work with me one-to-one, then reach out to me via email or on social media and we can talk about it. I'm happy to have a 20-minute complimentary call with you as well to discuss if we're a good fit working together and how I can help you reach all of your goals, whether it's manifesting, career goals, all that good stuff. Alrighty, I hope you all have an amazing, fabulous week. Sending you so much love, and I'll catch you in the next episode. And if you love this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast and leave a review. And of course, you can follow me at Coach Deanna DeBolt on TikTok and Instagram. I'll catch you next time.